Okay, meeting open for Town Government Study Committee. Do I have a
Motion to
motion to open the meeting?
Second.
All right, all in favor? Okay, terrific, unanimous. So we have four agenda items, but before we do that, do I have a motion to approve the minutes from our November 10th meeting? Any discussion?
I haven't read it yet. I don't know why we can't get them ahead of time. What's the problem?
Well, they are emailed.
Sorry?
They have been emailed,
I didn't receive mine.
okay? You'll have to get together with Catherine on that, or, you know what? Okay, then,
No, you know what? I sent them only to you.
okay, I just
So
assumed
from
everybody
now
was.
on,
copied.
I'll send them to everybody.
Yeah, the minutes will be copied to everyone, it'll be
Yeah.
fine, as long as nobody responds or engages in any discussion. We'll have Mike, our secretary, email the minutes in advance so that you can accept them that way, so, all right?
I don't mind doing that, but once I've read them, but I don't want to do that until I've read it.
Okay. So,
I'm gonna read them into the record.
I'm gonna read them into the record,
Okay, carry on reading.
okay? So, let me repeat the motion on the floor. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes of November 10th meeting?
Not yet. How can we do that until?
Oh, you
we
want to
haven't
read it
read
now?
yet?
Okay, okay, that's fine. Betty, we're going to have John, Mr. Osborne, read the minutes a little bit.
Okay.
Thank you.
Give a few minutes, no problem. I'll still read them out to the public afterwards.
Betty, this is Mike. Did you get my mail with the Elm Square agenda?
I did, thank you.
And are you gonna come to town hall, or are you gonna do it by calling in?
I'm not sure quite yet, but,
Okay.
I noticed you included the access number,
Yeah,
so.
Either one.
Do you have you got a room available?
yeah, the town hall in the center room.
All right, I thought so. And you've had response from the other members?
Yeah, they're starting to come in.
Okay, very good.
Okay, that's fine.
Good, thank you for bringing that to my attention. Take your time, Mike. All set, Mike? John?
I'm ready to go.
Will anybody move on the motion that I made?
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? All right, it's unanimous. Betty, you vote in favor of approving the minutes? Okay, yes, so
Absolutely.
it is unanimous, thank you. Okay, so the four agenda items for this evening will be as follows. I will read the minutes from the November 10th meeting, which is our custom with this committee, kind of a unique situation so that we can continue to help the public stay well-informed as to what actions we are contemplating, what actions have been taken, and just to really bring everyone up to speed, if you will. Since participation at live meetings is impossible, sometimes it's hard to connect all the dots unless you attend or watch every meeting. So we try to bring everybody current by allowing the opportunity for you to listen me speak out or the minutes. The second agenda item is an ethical consideration or concern that I'd like to bring to the committee. There'll be a possible vote there. The third item is we're going to review the initial draft. That should be the bulk of our meeting tonight. The great work that John Osborne and John Christopher have been doing for this committee. And then lastly, the fourth item, there might be possible votes to advance the draft based on our discussion from the past where we may be considering that when the draft is at a certain condition and a quality that we may want to vote as a committee to share it with public officials and especially department heads. So without further ado, I will now read out the November 10th, 2020 and also provide some explanation to some portions of it, just to make it clear. So, we opened the meeting at 5:32 on November 10th. Motion by Mr. Dempsey, seconded by Mr. Christopher. It was unanimous. We moved on to the second item, motion to approve minutes from October 22nd, meeting as submitted by Mr. Dempsey. It was seconded by Mr. Osborne. That was also unanimous. The chair signed the paper copy to submit to town clerk by Secretary Dempsey after reading them out loud. The chair, that's myself, summarized our efforts thus far to develop a town bylaw for a town administrative position. So I'll stop again right there. I know this is familiar for those that have been following our work, but those who are not, we've decided as a committee to move forward by implementing or suggesting to the Board of Selectmen to implement a town administrator or town manager first by bylaw, and then after a period of time, we will suggest pursuing it through what's called special legislation, which effectively is going to the State House, going to our state legislature, and ask them to create a law that will actually be signed by the governor to make it a more permanent solution for our town. The hope is that in between those 2 points, we'll be able to get used to the process, bring in qualified people, and really work out any bugs that may need to be worked out. I think experiencing the tremendous change in government by appointing a town manager should be something that, in a way, we feel as a committee should be dealt with very, very thoughtfully and not, rushed through and made permanent, right away. So the next item is the chair acknowledges the work of our subcommittee. We do have a subcommittee consisting of Mr. Osborne and Mr. Christopher, who the committee, this larger committee, put together by vote, so that they, in fact, are doing the bulk of this committee, and that is to write this document, which will be the document that will produce the evidence, will produce the ideas, the law, the relevant laws, the relevant bylaw language that we feel that we can present to the Board of Selectmen for their consideration. So, the next part of the agenda that I'm going to read out to you was very, very technical. We had a document that the subcommittee basically looked at, and we went through a lot of details so that we could reconcile some other sources of information on how to construct this position called the town administrator. So I'll just go through some of this language. I realize it might be hard to follow because it was the most technical meeting that we had, but I'll go through it in keeping with our process here of sharing the minutes in detail with the public. We discussed Section 1, Item 4, regarding the posting of a bond or insurance coverage by the town administrator. They would be obligated to pay for it, meaning the town. Mr. Christopher stated that it was advisable to protect the town with such a bond. We will leave it up to the selectmen to decide on an amount. We all agreed to keep it in the draft. The next item, Mr. Osborne compared the draft number 2 document to the table received from the selectmen regarding a new job description for the finance director. Some items were marked as belonging in a job description for the town administrator. So Mr. Osborne actually went through that he did an audit of that document and came to this committee with suggestion of what should be included, what should not be included or enhanced in our draft. So the remainder were found to be covered by sections of the draft number 2 document, by the existing finance bylaw or the existing personnel bylaw. Mr. Dempsey said this comparison document is important to show the selectmen we have included all their concerns. Mr. Cox agreed with the choices made in the comparison. So just so a little bit of background, there are 2 other bylaws that are going to be remain effective, at least to help us construct a new bylaw for implementing a town administrator. And those 2 bylaws are the current and existing finance bylaw and the so-called personnel bylaw. Mr. Dempsey said this comparison document is important to show the selectmen we have included all their concerns. So I want to repeat that. Mr. Cox agreed with the choices made in the comparison. Now, next item, Mr. Osborne did highlight 2 items that from the selectmen's list. Number 47 related to coordination with the Board of Assessors. And Mr. Christopher will write into the next draft, which is the one that will be available this evening. The second item, number 58, related to compliance with state ethics and open meeting laws. The discussion around this centered on compliance being too strong a term. In other words, do we want to use the word compliance in this bylaw for a town administrator? The discussion around this centered on compliance being too strong a term. Some members related their experiences. We decided that compliance responsibility may need to be added to the personnel bylaw. The town administrator should be responsible for regularly educating all employees regarding these two areas of law. Mr. Christopher will add this to the draft, and that'll be the draft that we will review tonight. Mr. Demore further described each section of the draft number 2 document. Mr. Dempsey asked if days, the word days in section 8, items 6 and 7 should be changed to calendar days to avoid confusion. We all agreed it should. Mr. Dempsey, next item, Mr. Dempsey asked about the reasoning for section 10, excluding any temporary administrator from being considered for the permanent position. Mr. Christopher stated this was to avoid employees being offered undue consideration. We'll talk about that probably this evening a little bit more. He will change it to say current town employees acting as temporary administrator will be excluded from consideration from the permanent position. Next item, we discussed access to legal advice for town employees and board members. The state provides hotlines for getting answers to some questions. The town administrator will control access to town council, but with their experience, should be able to reduce the amount of use of council. The next item, Mr. Osborne will check on West Newbury and how they handled the relationship between the selectman chair, the town, and the town administrator. This relates to how much one-on-one interaction is allowed. We had a discussion about some concerns that some of that might be highlighted again tonight as well. The last item, Mr. Dempsey asked if we are expected to produce a job description for the administrator. Mr. Christopher told us about the town of Wenham online contract for their administrator as a resource. We decided to wait for comments from the selectmen on this. The last, in concluding the meeting from November 10, Mr. Demore thinks the draft, as discussed thus far, is about 95% complete, and here we are at the next meeting. By the way, we do have here an employment agreement between Town of Douglas and Town Administrator, and I think this is very helpful for this committee to review. Betty, I brought a copy over to
Yes.
you as well.
I have
And-
that,
and
thank you.
I think in due time, whether it's tonight or subsequent meetings, we'll be discussing elements of the job description. But it does bring to mind that our committee work is not to create a job description. Our committee is to create a bylaw, which would be the basis for a job description. My next agenda item is our first discussion item with a possible vote. And I'll read the agenda item for the public. The item is ethical considerations and written agreements pursuant to draft review commentary and edit suggestions. So here is one of the things that is of concern, and perhaps some of you will share this concern, and some of you will not, and perhaps you may support me on an issue that I think is important. From my experience, we never want to create, with all good intentions, we never want to create a situation where someone falls into an ethical trap. Because if someone does fall into an ethical trap, sometimes it also implicates the town at large or other people unknowingly, and certainly without intention, and always with good intentions. So one of the things that's came to mind recently is I thought, we're going to ask government officials, especially department heads, government officials in general, to provide comment and edit suggestions to our draft. okay? In fact, we're probably, if we vote that way, we probably are gonna do that before we even present this to the Board of Selectmen. So I wouldn't want to be in a situation where this committee has to field questions because one or two or more people who made significant suggestions and edit suggestions which we adopted also applied for the position and got it. I think that there could be a possible ethical dilemma with that. So let me go around the table and just, let me start off with Betty, and then I'll go to John, and then Mike, and just solicit your feelings about this notion that I have. Betty?
So you're saying somebody may make suggestions that we're requesting, if they have them, and then apply for the job?
Yeah,
Almost like it's, that we've done something unethical.
yeah, I'm more concerned about that person, but yes, it might even be a reflection of our
Right.
committee as
right.
well. I mean, I just, to me, in the public sector, creating your own job description seems to be
Exactly.
a dangerous
Yeah.
situation.
Introducing, something that,
Would be
might-
beneficial to one person.
right, and we
specific.
might not realize that that has happened, and then it'll come back later on to bite us.
Okay, right, just a
I
thought,
think we should be very cautious there, how we handle that.
okay?
If I may interject,
Go
And
ahead.
how will we know
Go ahead, Betty,
if
I'm
we're
sorry.
going down that slippery slope, or that it may present a problem? I guess that's why we have
in,
counsel.
sorry, Betty, have you done?
Okay, John?
If looking at the minutes on section page 2F, it says here, he will change it to say, a current employees acting as temporary administrator will be excluded for consideration of this permanent position. It seems to me that that applies here, does it not?
No, I'm talking about all government officials,
Yeah.
department heads.
We could have,
Oh,
as an example, a town accountant might be interested in applying for the job. I'm not making a judgment one way or the other, but
Of course.
Okay,
there could be somebody working in town that
Yeah.
we don't even know about, so.
I feel uncomfortable with this opening here.
Okay.
That's fine. John, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think what we're doing is probably one of the most important things we can do
You can speak up a little bit.
in government, and we have to have total transparency. And I think, to use a phrase, we have to be like Caesar's wife, so to speak, beyond suspicion. And actually, this would be a benefit to the people who are going to comment. And I see this as perhaps at the worst-case scenario, an appearance of a conflict. And the way that's cured normally under the ethics rules, and I'm not saying we even have to go to that extent, is that they make a disclosure to their appointing authority and I think it would be fine if anyone comes before this board and wants to comment, and they're a department head, or even one of the selectmen, all they have to do is state, I have an interest in applying for the job in the future. And I think that clears the air for everybody, and go from
Is
there.
that what John's saying, full disclosure at the time they make the suggestion or?
The comments,
ask us to
sure.
consider? Is that what he's saying?
Absolutely.
I can't hear everything.
Yeah, exactly right. What John is suggesting is that perhaps if someone is going to make a recommendation, that up front he makes a disclosure.
Yeah.
And that
Just-
disclosure that he's not interested in, he or she is not interested.
Interested, not interested, may be interested. It certainly clears the air, and it's very transparent.
Well, okay, I have a thought about that, but let me go around again. I apologize. Anything else, John?
No, that's
I have
it
a
for me.
thought
Okay,
about
I'm
that.
passing, John.
Mike, your thoughts?
I mean, I don't know, but I don't think we should make it difficult for people to make comments. And the more restrictive that we make it, we may just not get any comments at all, which is what we don't want,
Okay,
So I think we ought to be a little careful about making it too, any really restriction. We're just looking for comments. We can say, just because you offer us comments doesn't mean we're gonna put it in there, you know, that kind of thing.
Okay? So if we think about what John Christopher suggested, which is a very good suggestion, that won't solve the issue, if there is an issue, if someone, you know, really does make suggestions that are materially significant and that are adopted, and then at some point, that person in the future just changes their, you know, decides after the fact
Sure.
that they may want to apply for the position. And again, I think the worst-case scenario, John hit it right on the head, John Christopher, and that is, you know, we're grappling here with the potential worst-case scenario of an appearance of an ethical situation, not an outright blatant act of unethical behavior. So do we have a remedy? And if we adopt a minimum remedy as John perhaps is suggesting, could that be written into the bylaw? John?
I don't know if that would make it too formalistic, I think.
Okay.
I would just like, I'm just sensitive to transparency, and I can understand Mike's position. You might not get people wanting to comment. They might not want to commit themselves one way or the other.
Okay.
But I think, you know, the way society is with the QAnons and everything else going on, and we have to be above suspicion in the way we move this forward. And I think if someone comes in and you hit the nail and they had a material change they want made, is that change being made because down the road they're feathering the nest, or is that change for the benefit of whomever may come on as town administrator? Those are the considerations. If somebody just says, you know, change the working hours or something like that, or that's a little bit different. You know, I'm sensitive to calling people on the carpet and making them feel like they're called on the carpet, but I also feel if you're in government and you're interested in a position, to say, and it can be non-committal, and say, I may in the future be interested in this job when I see how the bylaw is finally written. That would be perfectly acceptable. You know, somebody coming from the outside that shows up at a meeting that works at General Electric or Raytheon that wants to make a comment,
Sure.
they can make it. They don't have to disclose anything because they're not in government.
Yeah, I am.
Then they may apply for the job. Who
I'm
knows?
specifically talking about people
In government.
In government
Yeah.
today, in a position of authority
Yep.
in our government now, active. So is there any, do we address this at all, or do we ignore it?
Well, I think maybe as a operating procedure, when we have a Zoom meeting for the comments from department heads.
Okay,
I don't think we should include it in the bylaw.
Yeah, I don't
We
think it should be in the bylaw.
I
okay.
think we should just comment when they collectively get together, they need to declare their position on it somehow.
Or we could even ask them the question.
Okay. So Betty, what John and John have suggested is that we basically, because Mike brought up a good point, we don't want to create a restrictive environment or an uncomfortable environment where people that would wish to make comment are afraid to. So I think when we do present it to the public, then we will verbally, openly, express that desire of this committee that, you know, if anybody is contemplating applying for the position,
Yeah.
they should disclose that before they make a comment. I mean, that's a great solution. I think also, and I agree with you, therefore, it doesn't burden this committee that we have to include that language in the bylaw. So,
West Newbury and was it Douglas, where I have a copy of their agreement? Has that been addressed on either of those documents? I didn't see that.
would you know?
I just think, you know, when people don't know what they're going to do, they might come in to listen and make a few comments and then think, well, maybe I have the qualifications for this, and I've been sitting here making suggestions. So are they out of the loop? Have they done something wrong? Seems like everybody's looking for a way to challenge something today.
The one thing I've taken from the ethics law is the appearance of conflicts. And it's very easily solved by just making a disclosure with your appointing authority. I don't think what we're talking about tonight is even that far into the ethics law, but it's certainly from its standpoint of government transparency. Some type of disclosure, I think, might be appropriate. And then somebody says, I may, down the road. I haven't decided
Yeah,
yet.
somebody might say, you know, I may be interested in the future.
Yeah, that's perfectly fine. At least when we get the comment, we can consider whether it's coming from sincerity or it's coming from self-interest.
Got it.
Well, and we, you know, we're all human too, so if someone makes that disclosure, then I can trust whether you make the disclosure or not, and we've worked that out between us, then I'm going to trust the comments are in the best interest of the town and not someone specifically.
And it can work both ways, because someone could come in and make a profound comment that is so wonderful that everyone's wheels start clicking that this is the person we want for the job.
That's true, too.
So it
Yeah,
works that way, too.
Yeah, John brings up a good point, Betty. Someone could make a brilliant idea that everybody really likes, and then we actually actively recruit that person. We get so excited.
We all look at each other and say, that makes perfect sense.
That makes perfect sense. Wow. So, okay. I don't see, unless anybody in the committee feels that we should vote on this, or if there's something to vote, I don't see that there is. That's my opinion.
As long as we have an understanding that going forward for that particular phase of
Yep.
we have the
Well, it'll be in the
understanding.
minutes, won't it?
It'll be in the minutes, and I'm a big fan of, moving a committee forward, or the work of a committee with consent and not have to vote for everything.
Right.
So we're in agreement that by consent, we'll address this at the appropriate time, and we'll have it duly recorded in our minutes for tonight.
Correct.
Okay,
That's fine.
very good. All right, very good, thank you. All right, the next part of the agenda is my favorite part, and that is when John Osborne and Mr. Mr. Osborne, our subcommittee, our writers, are going to present us with this version of the draft, which is the number 2 version.
Number 3,
Number 3, I'm sorry,
making progress.
making progress.
Time flies when you're
Time
having fun.
flies. So I don't have a copy with me, because I gave out all my copies. Do you have an
Joey,
extra one?
here's an
Okay,
extra.
I got an extra one here. Okay.
Do you want me to go through it
No, I
first?
got one.
Do you want me to go through it first, or do you want to?
No, you go through it.
Okay.
You do your thing.
Well, we left you with 9 pages, we still have 9 pages, so I'm encouraged.
Well, after the last meeting, I put into the bylaw, and I used italicized and boldface language that everyone could see. The first thing we did is the legal references, right after the preamble, just to let people know that, when they see, there's certain other bylaws that interplay into this town administrator bylaw, so that when we refer to certain sections and other bylaws, that, this is a heads up, that be aware that this will happen as you read down through the document. Going over to the second page on powers and duties, there was some concern, I think, at the last meeting about an administrator sometimes being a little bit too cozy with the board chairman. I'm not saying that would ever be the case here in town, but, 25, 30 years from now, a version of this bylaw will hopefully still be in effect. So we put in there in powers and duties, we said the administrator as agent of the board of selectmen, as a matter of law, owes the board of selectmen collectively and individually the complete impartiality and transparency in the dissemination of information and communication to each board member. So in other words, it's basically a statement of what his duty is as an agent anyhow, but it's just a reminder and a point that some select person could make if he or she feels that they're getting cut out of the loop between the chairman and the town administrator, or any other selectman in the town administrator.
John, did you omit loyalty and fidelity?
Well, No, utmost loyalty and fidelity. That's in
You
there.
didn't quote that.
Oh, I'm sorry. That's in there.
Missed it.
Yeah. Okay, it's in there. He owes the utmost loyalty and fidelity in the performance of his or her assigned duties, requiring therefore complete impartiality and transparency in the dissemination of information and communications to each board member. So,
By the way, Joe, if, as we go through these, and also that's replies to Mike, is if you have any concerns about this, the time to mention this is when we're reading these sections. So if they're acceptable to you, we're assuming that you're accepting them, unless you address it.
Okay, I read it in advance,
Okay?
I am very comfortable with it, and I applaud you both for addressing the issues squarely. We spent 20, it seemed like 15, 20 minutes on this issue. It seemed like a long time, and it was something we were concerned about, the relationship sometime getting a little bit too cozy between a Board of Selectmen
Right.
chair and a finance, in our case, finance director, not specific to anybody, just in general, from my years of being in,
Right.
in the public. Just so everyone can hear it in the public, it's very well done. I'll read it to you. The administrator, as agent for the Board of Selectmen, as a matter of law, owes the Board of Selectmen collectively and individually the utmost loyalty and fidelity in performance of his or her assigned duties, requiring therefore complete impartiality and transparency in the dissemination of information and communications to each board. That's very well done. And that's, and that is that is governance. That's not a job description item, it's a bylaw. It's governance, it's what we expect, and we're not in the business of writing a job description here. We may be involved in that process, but the work of this committee is to create a bylaw.
okay, going on to page 3, item F. This talked about the inventory of real property and rental property in town. And John and I, in discussions, indicated that one of the problems we've been hearing is use of fields, use of rental properties, how, when, and where. So I think we added just this language at the very end, that the town administrator would develop protocols for the rental and use of town properties. And I'm sure that will be a major headache for him or her, but as long as he doesn't have to make
Also
out.
the upkeep, John.
The upkeep, up above it says in section F, develop, keep, and annually update full and complete inventory of all real property.
Okay, I see that, yes, repair.
Yeah, and maintained and repaired in a timely manner. This was just an add-on, Betty, concerning, there's apparently some disputes over rental and use of properties, so he or she's gonna develop,
Ticket.
he or she's gonna develop protocols for how to go about renting.
So for example, how do we do capital improvement projects in this town? So we're putting the town administrator in a position of, to really oversee all capital improvements in this case.
Right.
So for example, I know Mike has done some tremendous work in town, in a lot of areas, but I know that VC was an issue, VC Park, the building and so forth. But correct me if I'm wrong, Mike, but my recollection is that you were the point man often for that, to bring to the attention of the Board of Selectmen things that needed to be done and so forth. And, we thank you for that, and that's important service, but we might not be able to get that reliable level of service from everybody who's in charge of or involved in running a part of our town that has some expensive inventory and property. So, I think also a wonderful young man, Chris LaCory, who's been, so wonderful to our town for years, with the technology. The last time I was on the Board of Selectmen, we had approved a whole bunch of money to bring all that technology up to the level it needed to be, and
I remember.
remember that, Betty? And of course, I've been out of the loop for a while, and I keep forgetting that technology has a lifespan of 10 seconds.
Sure.
All of that stuff had to be replaced. It was shocking to me when I found that out a few weeks ago when I had a conversation with Chris when he was setting up these meetings for us, so yeah, I love the fact that you put in the language in here that really makes it clear the town administrator really needs to get in front of the ball, not behind it, and not leave it to others, or at least to be part of the process of inventorying our real property, our rental property, and, you know, making sure that things get maintained. In addition to just capital improvement projects, in addition to that. So, I'm sorry, Betty?
Well, we have Washington Hall, we have the building that Dr. Doc Senior donated, that's a
Ah.
rental property. We have the Red Schoolhouse
Yeah,
and numerous playing fields,
yeah,
playgrounds.
yeah, good point. And expensive technology.
Yes, absolutely.
Mike, any questions or thoughts?
No,
Is this favorable to you?
I definitely agree. You know, the town administrator doesn't actually have to do it themselves necessarily, just make sure
Correctly, yeah.
that those things are getting done and nothing falls through the cracks because somebody retired or left the town or something, you know.
Right.
It also, you know, my experience is, and again, it's human nature, it also helps hopefully mitigate that competition that exists. It's like, this is my property, I'm gonna try to get as much attention and money now to take care of the thing that I love before
Right.
someone else competes with me on that. I think the town administrator from the top overseeing it all will be a little bit more judicious, and hopefully the process will be a little bit more balanced, hopefully.
It should be even-handed, not a competition.
Exactly, which, that has been my experience on the school committee, on the Board of Selectmen. Again, nothing, no ill will or no bad intentions, just human nature. If I'm in charge of an expensive piece of equipment in my town and then nobody seems to be in charge and I'm the only advocate for it, then I am gonna speak up and I'm gonna appear like I'm competing and trying to grab for money and attention. So,
That
Okay.
goes all over the state, doesn't it? We're all competing for a piece of the pie.
yeah, good point.
And going over to page 4, last meeting, Mike raised an issue concerning, you know, educating people to ethics and open meeting law protocols and procedures. So we put in a section P, which is italicized, and it basically says that the administrator ensure receipt of education materials to all town employees and appointed board, committee, and commission members involving the provisions of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts open meeting law and ethics law, and develop procedures certifying that each recipient acknowledge receipt and understanding of the materials prior to employment or appointment. So at least it puts up a barrier of protection that they've at least received it, and they're acknowledging they understand it to the best of their ability, I would assume. People have different levels of understanding. So nobody can ever make the mistake, or make the statement, I didn't know that was, you know, that had to happen. The ethics law is a little bit more tricky. Anyone who's ever took the test, it has a few nuances that can trip people up, but the open meeting law is pretty straightforward. And the Attorney General also holds webinars on the open meeting law, so that, you know, the administrator can tap into that vein of education too. And the Attorney General is the enforcement officer and compliance officer technically.
So, I like it because it, you know, ensure receipt of educational materials, develop procedures certifying that each recipient acknowledge receipt and understanding of the materials prior to employment or appointment. Therefore, that removes the town administrator from being the enforcer. He can't enforce people.
He doesn't have the authority
He
anyway.
doesn't have the authority, we can't give him the authority, can't have the authority, and we didn't want to leave it open-ended either and say, well, is it his or her responsibility if someone has violated open meeting law and then we found out they didn't do the training? But we can make that position responsible for making sure that he has a receipt on file. Did you do the training, and did you sign this form that says you understand what open meeting laws and what the ethics are. If not, I'll be happy to make an appointment with you, and I can, help you through it a little bit. But we don't make that person responsible for enforcing, because legally he cannot.
He
And,
said- he
and,
said-
one of the things we want to do, I think what this committee wants to do is we want to prevent overreach. We don't want to do a sloppy bylaw or sloppy job description that it causes someone to overreach beyond the bounds, the legal bounds of the position. I'm sorry, John.
Yeah, that's right. I was just thinking, he or she could use this section as a form of discipline or reprimand if a person acknowledged receipt and understanding, then goes off on a tangent and violates ethics and violates, open meeting law. It could even be grounds for removal of a board appointee, somebody on one of the boards volunteers and some reason just doesn't want to follow the strictures of the law. Certainly, that would give him some power to do that, but he really doesn't have, he or she couldn't have enforcement powers with respect to fines and things of that nature, but.
That's a very good point, because the town administrator or manager will also be the personnel administrator. So if someone is going to blatantly violate ethical or open meeting laws after saying, oh, I understood it, I signed that I did, and here's the receipt, it can be an item,
Yeah.
for some leverage to be able to, hopefully rehabilitate the employee or give the town the ability to rehabilitate or to, show them the door.
Remove is the word.
Move the person.
I like this because it fixes a problem, I think, like I talked about last time, that exists right now, in that there really isn't much accountability on this issue.
Oh, good point. You brought that up at the last meeting, yes. Yeah. Betty, any thoughts on that?
No, I think, the chairman, if somebody gets appointed to a committee and commission, the chairman or maybe the secretary to that board could, give that person a packet and tell them that this is something you need to do, and you have, I don't think there's any time frame. And I think Beth Cunnif's office is very helpful too with that training and in giving people detail what to do and how to do it.
So are we taking, I appreciate your comments, because I think, that's part of the procedural aspects that can be expressed in the job description. My question is, to all of you, does this take anything away from the role of the town clerk, where she has to swear people in and make sure that they are before they attend their first meeting? In fact, it was the town clerk that told me, if I remember correctly, that I needed to make sure that my ethics and open meeting law training was current before I could, and then come in and be sworn, and then, proceed and be
Well,
involved in this committee.
I think we discussed that. I think I brought the issue up that she was already doing it. And we weren't sure whether it was just her voluntary procedure or there was some mandate that may have come down from the Secretary of State's office, or statutory mandate.
Bill Galvin's office could help us maybe with that.
Yeah. Worst case scenario, this is just another layer of protection.
Yeah, okay.
Because sometimes, I don't know about appointee, I know about appointees have to get sworn in, but employees, if you want to go work for the highway department, I don't think you have to go to the town clerk and
No,
get sworn
no,
in.
no, no.
So that, it's still from an employment standpoint.
If you're gonna serve on a board or a committee, my understanding has always been you need to have your training and current, and you need to, before your first meeting, you need to get sworn in before your first meeting.
Yeah.
And,
Is that an annual?
Biannual.
it's biannual.
Whenever your term
Biannual, okay.
runs out.
Biannual, or whenever your term runs out. Or if you're gonna start a term, like I've been absent,
Right.
I've been on hiatus from government duties for a few years, and for me to reengage and be with you in this committee, I had to get my training up to speed. Current, and I remember this summer I sent out emails to everyone, please make sure this is done before. If you have it done, that's fine, if not,
The,
good, thank you.
Not do it.
If not, do it.
I think we should just leave it in for the time being. That could
Yeah.
be further discussed.
But you know what, I will ask that question, I'll ask Bet.
Yeah.
I'll send her an email and say, you know, the requirement, is that something that's required by the Secretary of
We
State?
could certainly strike the provision that applies to board appointments, but employees, you know, they don't get sworn in by town clerk, to my
No,
knowledge.
no, no, I'm talking about just board appointments.
Yeah.
I'll send her an email and I'll respond to, you know, I'll have an answer at our next meeting.
But we're not taking away from, I mean,
we don't
again,
wanna
it's
take-
another case where the town administrator, really, his job is to oversee this, make sure that the clerk is doing it if the clerk is whose
Good
duty
point.
it is. And, you know, make sure that the materials get dispersed to new people.
It,
And
it could be interpreted that way.
yeah, so,
I might as well
Either
just
way.
leave it in. They
Oh,
can-
yeah, we
They can work it
definitely
out
leave it in.
between the two of them.
It won't do any, if the town clerk says this is required of me by law, we still can leave it in as something that he can oversee to make sure it's done.
Because in this bylaw, the town administrator, with the assent of the selectmen, will make board appointments. So
Right.
when he makes a board appointment, he goes, oh, by the way, here it is,
Yeah.
and get yourself sworn in and know everything that's in here before you.
Well, you know, at the end of the day, if you look at the history of complaints and issues that have come up, and those of us that have, you know, in public office for many, many years, and we've seen things, or may even possibly have experienced things ourselves, it all comes from two big areas, ethics and open meeting. So,
You know, and 99% of the time, it's all just inadvertent, or people
absolutely.
have the, you know, some of this stuff is, particularly the ethics, it can be very nuanced.
Yeah,
You may think you're doing the right thing, and well, lo and behold, so, but there's always somebody to guide you, whether it's town council or up at the Ethics Commission asking for an opinion, so.
well, I think most of the risk, I know that, when I was on the school committee, they basically gave me the best advice, basically keep your mouth shut for a year and learn as much as possible.
I
Because, you know, if we're gonna have open meeting violations and ethical traps that people fall into, it's because it's largely based on a volunteer core and a volunteer, nobody's doing this professionally or full-time, they didn't go to school for this, we don't have masters of, in public administration, and all of the, you know, you can do a module at the Massachusetts, the Commonwealth's website, but if you don't experience things, you know, it takes time, it takes experience. Mike's been serving our town for 25 years. Betty's been serving our town, I don't know how many years, Betty, I know many, many years. God bless you and thank you.
John has
Just go
about-
with many, many.
Many, okay, we won't mention any dates.
John's been around a long time, too.
John's been around since, well,
Well, I
sometime,
was thinking that
since,
today. I mean,
sometime after the incorporation, we're
years of
not sure when.
Experience just in this board, so it's huge.
45 years.
45 years for John, so yeah, we probably have about 150 years of experience at this setting.
When it comes to ethics, you know, I've always told people that sometimes you just point it right out to them, it's very clear. Other times it isn't so clear, but you always go by I always tell people, if you feel you might have an ethics problem, then best case scenario is to step aside unless it's completely necessary that you participate.
Yeah.
And make a disclosure, do your very best to avoid that appearance.
I think disclosure is, you know, it's the same in my business as a financial advisor. It's disclose, 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 disclose. It just really, it creates the transparency that's required for fair dealing. So,
Okay.
great. So I will put that question to the town clerk, and, but I do agree that we should leave that in there. So I think it's very well done. Thank you.
And moving along to page 8.
Hang on a
Oh.
second, John. One item I'd like to bring up to your attention, that is Section 3, item number 1. Notice that it's highlighted in bold. I'd like us to keep that bold in the document from now on, because wherever we refer to the committees of finance and a personnel bylaw, I think we should make sure that people see it's highlighted. What do you think?
Yeah, it's just, basically, it's like a citation.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, we have a personnel bylaw.
Yeah,
Correct.
We also have something separate called the Town of Groveland Personnel Procedures Manual.
that's not a
Correct.
bylaw.
But
That's
that's
not
not
a
a
bylaw,
bylaw. Okay,
That's an operation document that can be amended by the selectmen.
okay, an operation document that, and then we have this other item called the Town of Groveland Bylaws, Section 236A, which
Correct.
Mr. Osborne just mentioned, Department of Finance. So just the public knows, and I know everybody in the committee knows, we are not terminating any existing bylaws.
No.
So by referencing and highlighting, I think is important, because our bylaw that we're going to draft and hopefully will be adopted with any iterations, will exist alongside
Right, exactly.
the Town of Groveland's Department of Finance and Budget bylaw, the Town of Groveland's Personnel bylaw,
That's
and for all intents and purposes, possibly subject to some revision over time, the Personnel Procedures Manual, which is an operations manual. So we're not getting rid of we're not replacing those things.
Exactly. We're just highlighting them to say that this is relevant. Okay, John, you're on.
Okay, moving on to page 5, item 5 at the very top. This plays into the whole fact that the administrator is going to be immersed in the budget development and operation and management of the budget. And we're just saying that he's going to be administering as adopted by the town meeting and in accordance with the general laws of Massachusetts, the town's Department of Finance and Budget bylaw, and this bylaw, to the extent this bylaw, a little bit is circular in the sense that the bylaw refers back to the Department of Budget and Finance, but we can't be too careful about how the budget is managed. And then on 7, we indicate that the administrator shall formulate and submit to the Board of Selectmen a capital improvement budget and a 5-year financial plan. John suggested, and we added the language, the financial plan shall be updated annually and included on the warrant of the annual town meeting.
Which is what we have been doing
We've been
in the
doing that.
last 2 or 3 years with the Capital Improvement Committee. And now that is now defunct, I think it still needs to be done.
Well, I mean, there's a great example right there, that the Department of Finance Budget bylaw remains a very significant document of which the town administrator that we may create needs to abide by. There's no dilution. The town administrator bylaw does not dilute any provision in the finance bylaw. And should not. And then, John, you bring up a point, the financial plan
Yeah.
has been updated, just in the last 2 or 3 years with the capital committee? Is that
No,
what you
I'm
said?
just saying that it was updated fairly recently
Mhm.
under the financial director because she took over the job when the Capital Improvement Committee became defunct.
Right.
So this merely says what we want to do is what we did before when the committee was functioning.
So just so the public is clear, especially those that are just chiming in, this committee is working on a bylaw to create a town administrator position, which effectively, we will eliminate the finance director's position. And those duties will be assumed by the town administrator, and largely following the existing Department of Finance and Budget bylaw. Just so it's clear to everyone. So we're not collapsing the bylaw, but we're not gonna hire a town administrator, plus also retain a position of finance director. Gonna collapse that position and consolidate that position under the town administrator, so. Thank you for that.
And, let's see, going over to page,
Page 5, section 4,
I think we already talked about that,
well, the
maybe.
personnel bylaw,
Well, it's just highlighted, that's all.
Yeah, that's all.
That's
Yeah,
all that we've
italicized.
done is highlight it. We didn't highlight it before.
okay, great.
Going over to page 8, section 10, this deals with the acting town manager. We added language. Any appointee, meaning who's appointed to be acting a town manager, who is a current town employee, shall be ineligible for immediate subsequent appointment as permanent town administrator. In other words, if you've been serving as acting, you can't take on the job once it's posted, you probably have to wait till the new town administrator leaves, then you can reapply or go someplace else. So,
Any appointee who is a current town employee shall be ineligible for immediate subsequent appointment as permanent town administrator. So we have language here, the appointment shall be for a period of not to exceed 90 days and it can be renewed. So section 10 on page 8 is acting town administrator.
Yep.
Let me read this a little bit. Let me read this through. All right, so let me read this so people can understand, because now that'll, I can understand it better too, and I might as well read it out loud so it's not, people can understand what we're talking about here, because they can't otherwise follow us. The Board of Selectmen shall designate within 10 days a town employee or other person to exercise the rights and perform the duties of town administrator during any vacancy caused by the temporary absence or suspension or removal, resignation, or death of the town administrator. The appointment shall be for a period not to exceed 90 days, and it may be renewed in the case of suspension, removal, resignation, or death only once for an additional period not to exceed 90 days. And now here is your add-on language. Any appointee who is a current town employee shall be ineligible for immediate subsequent appointment as permanent town administrator. That's very well done. That's it.
I have a
Wow. And we
question.
kept it all in 9 pages still.
Well,
Yes,
no,
Michael.
not quite, because there's certain spacing issues that have to be dealt with, which
Okay?
we're going to meet tomorrow and sort that out. And once we've done that, I think we'll be in a position, if you think this is adequate, to move it on to move it to the next phase. Do you want to put it on the website, or do you want to have administrators look at it first?
Well, first of all, Mike, you had a question or a
Yeah.
comment?
Yeah, question.
I'm gonna go around the tables again in a minute. Go ahead, Mike.
We may have dealt with this, but I'm not 100% sure, is what about elected officials versus appointed officials and their relationship to the town administrator? So, for instance, does the town administrator has the ability, according to this document, to remove appointed positions, people filling appointed positions, but they don't have the ability to remove elected officials. Do they have the right to even oversee elected officials or reprimand elected officials who haven't done what they're supposed to do, or violated the law, or violated some other bylaw or something? I don't think we addressed this, have we?
Short answer.
What's the short answer,
The
John?
answer is no.
Hmm,
All versus the United States.
Yeah,
Elected, it's up to the, if you don't like the elected official, vote him out of office. I better than die with the case scenario.
Well, that's important, because if we have a town administrator that doesn't understand or appreciate that, then we may have problems that you say, it's not in the bylaw, it's not in your job description to reprimand a department head, for example.
right, and, just on the surface, you come in now, say, a member of the planning board, which is one of the last elected boards, why is that person any different than a member of the Conservation Commission? Well, one is appointed and one is elected. So does that mean,
So that might,
Make it clear to him or her. I would hope they'd know that, but
Yeah,
right,
we-
you would hope, but I'm just saying that, the average person, if you didn't know that, you wouldn't understand why isn't he reprimanding Joe Baloney, who's violating
Mhm.
the town bylaw, when he reprimanded this person over here,
Good good argument to do away with elected boards.
Yeah, let's get rid of the elected boards
Yeah,
and
we'll put that
that'll
in
take care of
here.
that problem.
The,
That's our next project.
there's language in here, he only has the power to remove appointed people.
Okay, just
By
appointed people.
implication,
Good
he can't,
point.
But we can spell it out.
If we can just make a little distinction in there,
But only with the approval of the selectmen.
yes. I
That-
mean, ultimately, the
Only
town,
remove with approval of selectmen.
That's right.
ultimately,
That's-
the town administrator is working at the pleasure of the Board of Selectmen,
Exactly.
quite literally.
Exactly.
So they might say, you know what? You
I'm
can't
your
do.
boss.
But they still won't be able to say, yes, you can reprimand an elected official. They still cannot. So they have to be cautious too. But I think having that distinction will make it clear. And
Does the executive session play into any part of that?
Only-
Somebody's making a complaint?
Only to the extent of the open meeting law requirements of executive sessions. My understanding of executive sessions is if you have a complaint against you for your job performance or an allegation of dishonesty, you can either have an open meeting or executive session.
you have the choice to either have it openly
Open,
aired
yeah.
or executive.
Or closed, and you have a right to counsel.
Yep.
But it's all covered in the personnel bylaw anyway.
Yeah.
And we also say in here, in conformance with the personnel bylaw and the policy, the personnel policy procedures manual.
Is there such a thing as a recall petition?
No, that, we'd have to add that into our special acts.
The recall would only come through on a special acts. It's not anything that we could write into a bylaw. That's from John Christopher.
Okay,
I'm
I
not-
take,
I'm not
he
that
knows what he's
knowledgeable.
talking about.
I viewed that in some of the literature I read, that was one consideration when you're writing a charter or doing special acts, do you want a recall petition, which I always feel is kind of a two-edged sword, depending on the makeup of the town.
Do you hold any elected positions? Okay. I'm asking that question to Mike Dempsey. I was just curious, so I think that's an important distinction. I appreciate you bringing that out, something I didn't even think of, so. But, and I'm sure John and John did, but they didn't, because John made a good point. You have to assume, or you would hope that someone would know, but maybe we can help them along in case they didn't or weren't sure.
Right.
Because you know, Betty, we've been elected officials. And
Yeah,
you,
we've been on the firing line.
we've been on the firing line, and you know that some people will get hot under the collar and say, you know, I don't care that you're an elected official, this and that, this is what I expect you to do, or what I would wish for you to do, and then the fireworks start, and things
Right.
get crazy, so. But the town administrator should have the ability to reach into an appointed position for addressing concerns, issues, and taking, asking for, or putting that person on notice, or, you know, suggest remedial action or rehabilitation if there's things that are being done wrong. Especially in those two areas that we talked about, ethics and open meeting law violations.
And I think those appointed people deserve to have a conversation with the town administrator. You know, they may not have any idea that they've done something that,
Mhm.
you know, escalated to some nastiness. So I understand what Mike's saying. You know, he's been on many boards, and some people get contentious.
I can't remember an instance in this town though where the selectmen ever had to remove a board member. Officially, maybe there was conversations privately, that
Yeah.
it's time to move on, but I don't think we ever had conduct that would ever warrant.
No, I can't think of any. Betty, have you thought of anybody that was,
No,
no, that had
No.
the Board of Selectmen wanted them to remove for some egregious act and against the town, or?
I think when I served with my board, the 3-member board,
Mhm,
we kind of made a joke out of it. People come in and say whatever they want to us,
mhm.
and you know, we just put it aside, you know. And people will write letters and don't sign their names, and we throw those in the basket.
Yeah,
So, you know, you're there kind of to solve problems for people. And hopefully that's what happens. You do.
yeah, we had 3 boxes No names, fake names, and real names.
Yeah, that was fake news.
We invented that way before, we were ahead of our time.
We were ahead of
Ben.
our time.
No, Trump borrowed it from you, that's what.
Great.
We can add that elected official exclusion. Do we want to maybe come back next week and finalize this, if that's all that needs to be done?
I think we can capture the space on Monday night again, and if we can convene briefly next Monday, just to look at the fourth draft, which will be the final tweaks, and then I think at that time, I know that we've been working really well with consent, and, but at that point, I think we should, for the record, we should vote as a committee to move forward with making the document public for comment. And then we can discuss the details as to how we, some ideas on how to do that, so.
Do you want to have it on the website, as you say, for public comment, prior to meeting with the department heads?
I don't know what I want. I defer to the committee. What's your feeling? Let me go around. Let me start with Betty. Betty, what are your thoughts? You think we should roll this out first to department heads and then the public, or both at the same time?
Maybe at the same time.
Okay?
How about those minutes that we were talking about? Are they being put out there for the, public?
Oh, yes,
Are
absolutely.
they being posted all the time? So when people ask that they can't find something, it's good to be able to say, oh yeah, it's there and it's on the town website.
Yes, I've seen them there. I look for
Okay.
them. The wonderful young people that help us here, they're always recording these meetings whenever we ask them to have a meeting, and so everything is very public.
Good.
And the videos, the YouTube sessions, and then, yes, the documents are being posted on the website. So this document tonight, for example, tonight, we approved the November 10th meeting. You should expect to see it on the website.
Okay, and so we would meet next Monday to visit draft number 4?
Draft number
Is that what you're
4,
saying?
yeah, which is probably another 2 or 3 sentences total. I mean, we're just about done. We're just
Right.
going to do a little tweaking, just like, for example, the most recent idea that Mike had introduced in terms of making that distinction that the town administrator can, in fact, engage in a, not an elected position, but an appointed position
Appointed,
for personnel issues.
Right?
Okay.
I thought we covered that by reference to the personnel bylaw,
About what?
about,
Well, specifically about appointed versus,
Well, I think we do specifically give him or her the power to remove, with the advice of the selectmen,
right,
appointed officials and employees.
right.
We don't mention specifically that, that implies that he can't remove elected officials.
correct.
But I see no harm in just spelling it out.
No harm in spelling that out.
Okay.
I know it's, I
You
think,
want to, you want to interject that?
we just want to
Okay,
make sure,
all
yeah.
right, fine.
It kind of stands to reason that people elect the scoundrel. Who doesn't
Yeah.
have the scoundrel? Who
And
understands
I think it's not more, I don't think it'll end up being an educational piece for the town administrator, because he or she should know that, but I think it'll be an educational piece for people who are appointed and those who are elected, especially new ones that are very little experience being elected officials. That's why I was told, keep your mouth shut and vote when asked to on my first year in the school committee.
Exactly.
And it was good advice, because that was a heck of a lot of stuff to learn. I remember getting those packets on the Friday nights before the meetings, and they were 6 inches thick, some of them, no kidding, it was amazing.
I got
Exactly.
advice
Oh,
from
my
a
God.
very sage member of town government when I first came here about town meeting.
Yeah,
He said, the less you say, the better off you are.
better off you, yeah, exactly.
He's right.
John, any further questions, or, thoughts about the issue of, if we return next week, do you think we should do public plus town departments or government officials, or?
Just as a matter of courtesy, we might want to let the town officials have first crack at it.
Okay.
So that they don't feel like they're being slighted by
Okay,
being thrown in with the general public.
Okay.
As a matter of courtesy,
John?
I tend to agree with John there. I think it would be better to show the department heads the first before we put it on the website.
Okay. Mike?
I'm fine with that.
All right, and I won't make a decision tonight. I don't want to, let's vote on that.
Well, what's the consensus? I couldn't hear
Well, the
everybody.
consensus is that if I don't, the consensus is that seems to be that it's, we should have the town officials get first crack at it before the
Weigh in
public.
on it?
Yeah.
Sure, that makes sense.
Is that okay with you, Betty, you think?
Yeah, of course it
All
is.
right, then we'll leave it at that then. There's no
Yeah.
need to vote for that. I'll,
We could vote and it would be 3-2.
Yeah,
so,
that
you
doesn't
know,
matter.
It's okay.
I'll co-
You want to vote, Joe?
No, it's
Joe,
all
but
right.
we'll defeat it.
No, we have consensus, it makes sense to me, I'm fine with it.
Good.
The only time the next item I think we need to vote for is, we decide to do that, take that action. I think it's important, so that's fine.
Now you know how Chuck Schumer feels.
Well, I defer to the committee, I'm just the chair. My job is to run a meeting, that's it. You guys are the brains behind the operation, so
so-
thank you.
What will be the procedure? So we're gonna send in an email to the department heads? How long will we wait? Will we have a meeting where we ask them for input and then we'll post it on the webpage? Is that what you're thinking, or?
Well, the other question I have is, do you want to collectively have all the department heads at the same time in, or do you want to deal with them individually?
I think we should send, some may not be interested.
Some may not respond,
All right?
some may be interested. So what are you saying, John? What are you suggesting?
We could email as an attachment the final document, saying that we'd like to hear their review of it by such and such a date. If not, we're gonna move forward without any comments from them.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. We set a deadline. Now, of course, we're in the holidays, so we'll set a deadline. I don't know, I'm gonna guess maybe the first week of January.
Sounds good.
And then, by then, whether you've chimed in or not, then we're going to give it another 2 weeks to the general public. That's when we can put it on the website. That puts us to the middle, the second or third week of January. And then if it is the pleasure of this committee, you can appoint me as the point man, and I'll go to the Board of Selectmen meeting. I'll ask them to get on the agenda. You can all join me. And then we'll say, here it is. And it's also been tweaked, potentially, and modified with input from department heads and also public members. And hopefully, we'll also have a lot of emails, people just complimenting it and saying, this is fine, I like it the way it is, good job, or I hate it, whatever, just might be some general comments without any specific editing or modification requirements. So we'll present all of that in a loose binder, and I'll present it to the board, and then that'll put us in January, and it'll be up to them to contemplate on the document presented. They may send it back to us for further modification, and that should put us into February, and then from there on, that puts us in a position to go to town, to have it ready for town meeting of 2021.
I think the public comments, apart from substantive comments, may give the selectmen an idea of how the town feels about even the position.
That's a great point.
Yeah, so,
That's why the Board of Selectmen has asked us to do this, or has agreed that we should convene and do this work, but we're gonna ask them last what their opinion is. And I give them a lot of credit. I haven't heard a peep, other than a passing compliment at the Moole's Isle. So the Board of Selectmen, I think, really respects the work that we're doing, and the members of this committee, and I think are eager and willing to chime in, but they know they're gonna be last on the block after we've passed it around to everyone and come up with what we feel will be the best possible product for them to contemplate, so. It's been a good process,
we-
and I thank you all.
The next question I guess I have
Sure.
for you is that you were going to comment to the selectmen whether we needed to pursue any of this stuff, namely the job description piece for the person. a town administrator.
Uh,
I mean, we didn't want to, it's not in our remit,
Mhm.
and you were thinking that it should be. And
I-
I don't know whether
Yeah.
we should or not, but you
That-
need to approach them at some point and ask them how do you want us to handle that? Or do you want us to handle it? Or they are happy to deal with it themselves?
In that, that memorandum that I did way back when, one of the pages has a pro forma job description from the Mass Municipal Association. To any degree that would be helpful, I don't know.
My thought is this, when we reach that point that we make the presentation to the Board of Selectmen, I will effectively say that our work is essentially done, after we're done with modifications and and then at that point, if it is the pleasure of this committee to continue working in some capacity, then I will ask them to renew a charge and add an element to it, including giving us the authority to now, with a new charge, to engage in creating a job description. But I call it a recharge, literally, and just ask we're done, our committee
Okay.
is done.
That's fine.
Will you, I don't know if everyone will, on this committee will wish to continue, or if we do create a recharged committee, we have to recruit and get new members. But it's a second phase that I will ask for.
You seem very interested in job descriptions, so maybe
I think
you
they
could
would
be
be-
a subcommittee and John and I could have a rest.
That's fine. Maybe I'll
We
do that.
decide to go that route.
Maybe, yeah, well, that's why, but it's premature at this point.
Okay,
Yeah, I think I'd like to close
okay.
this session
Fine.
and then come back and ask to be engaged in a second round of work that will be a little
A
different.
sequel.
Yeah, kind of a sequel, yeah, exactly, yeah. Good point, John. So, did I go around, did everybody comment? Are we fine? Just for the record, we started the meeting at 6:35, by the way.
5:30.
I'm sorry, 5:35 or 5:40, I think. I didn't announce that. We started
5:39.
5:39. We started a little bit late. Okay, any further comments? Any questions or comments?
That's it.
So I'll put together an agenda for next week. It basically is going to be one or two items. I will read the minutes, if you don't mind. Then we'll look at draft number 4, correct?
Correct.
Correct.
And then we'll take a vote if we want to move forward with disseminating it to the department heads and public officials.
Okay.
Great. All right. Any questions or comments?
No.
Do I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Move that we adjourn.
Moved,
Second.
seconded. Any comments, discussion? How do we vote? All in favor, unanimous?
Yes.
Okay, that was my speculation, and that actually happened. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thanks,
Thank
Betty.
you.
You have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.